everybody, welcome back to Unlimited Commander. I'm Adam, and I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Matt. Matt, how's it going?
It's going okay. You know how every once in a while you get into this mode where you start playing a game or doing something and it just like absorbs your life? Welcome to the Breath of the Wild situation, the charity stream that I've been doing for the last few weeks. I spend way too much of my extra free time right now just running through Zelda. Like we had a day off of D&D. My dungeon master had to take a week off, and I was like, I guess we could just get another stream in. Why not? And we did another 5-hour stream or something like that.
It wasn't a short one, I remember that.
Yeah. And I find myself just sitting there like, I could literally stream this all day, every day until I'm done with this game.
It's not a small game, so like there's lots to be had. I know we discussed how like, is farming for rupees, a good use of time, and I had like voted in our previous episode. I was like, farming for content is not great, and I retract. I take that back. As long as you're having a good time, and as long as the people that you're hanging out in your chat are having a good time, it's good content. I think that's all that really matters.
I'm glad to hear it, because we have hit the part of the game where there's going to be a lot more things that have to be farmed, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Nothing I can do. So all you can do is just be cheerful and happy and hang out with everybody in chat while you're mindlessly going around smashing buckets.
Yeah. That was a very interesting stream, too, because I believe that was the day where, or no, that must have been Wednesday, but it sounded like I got quiet and we were just chill vibing and going on stream. What actually happened was I muted my mic for a break, forgot to unmute it, and I had been sitting there freaking out about this dungeon the entire time.
So I see you too are a professional streamer now. Welcome. You know, you hit the big times when you messed up and didn't turn on a mic, or I can't tell you how many times I've like started stream and I'm just like, hey, welcome everybody, glad to see you, and everybody's like muted.
Yeah.
Oh,
Huge intros on like No Land's Band. I'm trying to show off everybody's stuff, give them nice intros, make sure everybody knows what's going on. And then I'll hear someone be like, hey, the mic's been off. Who's here? Like, we couldn't hear any of them. And I'm just like, cool.
I have, what was it? The first, I dropped my pencil. Hey, another pencil. My first time streaming a cube, the only time actually, but the first time I streamed a cube draft of my cube that I got some friends together for, I had Discord muted the entire stream. So chat only heard me talking and conversing with 3 other individuals for a straight 3 hours. No idea what they were saying. So don't worry. It's not that big a deal. We all still had fun. And whilst it was, of course, a stream, so there was very limited tapas and beer, we still had a good time.
That's good. That's good. How have things been going for you this week?
Hella crazy, honestly. The cold that you packed up and shipped me that I discussed in our last episode turned out to be full-blown COVID, and I was down and out for a week myself. And on the last 2 days of my being ill, my partner Libby caught it from me and then spent her next 7 days being disgustingly ill like me, and we were just been like a sad couple of sacks on the couch for like, it's been a crazy 2 weeks. We're actually like 3 days behind what we would normally consider a recording day for us. We're recording on a Friday instead of the Tuesday, which is going to make editing this crazy. So, disclaimer, if it sucks, I rushed it. Sorry.
So hit the like button.
Otherwise, though, I did manage to get my poop in a group. And yesterday I had my first ever and wildly successful 12-hour subathon on my stream, where I was shown love and affection by the community that basically some of the only people that listen to our podcast are in this community, and also came and hung out with me. Most people actually hung out like the entire day. It was amazing. I had a great time. We played a bunch of games. I ate a bunch of crap that was literally the most disgusting stuff I've ever eaten. Uh, Keep an eye out for VODs and or TikToks I'm going to make out of some of the clips of my terrible reactions to things. I got pied in the face a couple times with some cream pies, and generally just had a really good time hanging out with my friends. It was lovely.
It was a great show. And also, if anybody ever wants to go back and check out that VOD or check out any of the stuff, Adam and I actually did a joint sealed event on there, just using Arena and doing a little bit of sealed. So if you are curious about like how I look at cards and kind of come up with the idea for what makes a fairly cohesive deck, I think we put that deck together in something like 10 minutes or something. We didn't really.
Yeah, it wasn't too long. I mean, again, welcome to opening cards with me, where it was a bad pool. You're welcome.
wasn't the best pool. I'm not gonna lie. It was.
You're welcome.
The best pool. But,
opening cards with Adam, you only get crap.
I mean, we didn't hit like any like super bombs, but we did at least. Like, we were able to put together a cohesive thing out of two colors. Like, it would have been much worse if we had like just barely shy of a cohesive deck in all 5 colors, and we would have had to go into 3 colors or something to build something worse. So we definitely did get dunked on by somebody who got. You said 10% of their deck was rares, and that's probably true. They had at least.
I honestly think we're light on that too. Like, there's no way that they just so happened to like in the 15 or 16 cards they saw out of that deck that they had 4 rares. Like, and if they did, even still, right? Like, of that 15 or 16 cards that they saw, 25% of them were all of their rares, and they weren't small rares either. Like, we were playing Innistrad Remastered, which just came out on Arena this week, and they were rocking an Archangel Avacyn, a Thing in the Ice, a Bruna, and then what was the other one? Thalia's Lancers.
Thalia's Lancers, yeah.
Like, 3 of them were white, 1 of them was blue, white and blue, and sealed love going together anyway. Like, what was going on? And I was complaining about it at the time, but the thing that really got me is that how did we get matched up against that deck when we went, like, we lost 2 times already? How did that deck lose twice? And then it got matched up against us, and that was our 5th game. Like, we went, we had a terrible record of 2-3, and that's the deck that put us out. And that deck had no business playing against us.
I'm looking forward to our next pool, because I actually do want to see if you believe that this bad pool curse will continue, because I usually have stupid luck on pools. Like, I'll end up with weird pools like that one where it's like, oh yeah, 4 on color rares. I guess we know what color we're in, like. So.
I just, again, and we make the joke, and then there's box openings on my stream where I've sat down with Libby right beside me. We did it most recently with All Will Be One, and she notoriously opens all this stuff. She actually, out of the 2 packs of Khans of Tarkir that we pick up randomly, because Libby and I love packs, and again, buy singles unless you like cracking packs, and then you like treat yourself sometimes. Buy singles though, but we like cracking packs, and we'll go and we'll pick up random packs when we're at the mall where one of the LGSs are, or when I go to pick up singles at one of the other LGSs in town, and we'll pick up some packs. And 2 packs in her entire life she's opened of Khans, and 2 fetch lands have been pulled from those packs. She ended up with a Flooded Strand and a Bloodstained Mire out of the 2 packs of Khans she's ever opened. And it's been proven while we've been sitting here opening packs on stream, her and I sitting beside each other, and she says, is there anything you'd like out of this set? And I said, yes, I would love a Mondrak. I need one for my token deck. And she goes, boom, this one? And I said, yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much for your contributions. Like, my luck for opening packs is terrible. I've used all my luck up in finding lovely friends and a great partner. And I don't get to open good cards. That's just the way it goes. I don't open good cards. So it will stick. You will find out on our next and any future. I don't open good cards.
Okay, I'll tell one quick story about rares. This is actually outside of Magic, into the realm of Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't everybody run away now. But back when I was a kid, I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I went into this card shop near my parents' house, and the guy was just like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I was given like $4. I'm gonna buy one pack." And he's like, "Okay, cool. What do you want?" And I was like, "I'd like to pick from that one." He's like, "You want to pick it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So he hands me the box, and I'm like, "I think this one's the good card." And in that set, there was a particular card. It's called Jinzo, if anybody cares. But at the time, it was like $100 card because it was brand new. It shattered the way that the game was being played at the time, and it was just like it was super rare. It's super ultra rare. So I pull this one pack. I open a Jinzo, and the guy was like, "I will give you a full box of that set for that card." And I was like,
Well, that's a
"Okay."
tough sell.
So I gave it to
How
him.
many times in a row can you do that?
Yeah. So I gave it to him. He gives me a box. I pick through and I pick another one pack from that box and I crack it and it's a Jinzo. And I was like, "Again?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And so he hands me another box. I go in 2 packs deep, pull another Jinzo. I go, "Again?" And he looks at me and he's just like, "Okay, but this is the last one." And he takes it and gives me the thing. And I pulled a Jinzo out of that box later too, but I get into my parents' car with 3 boxes of Yu-Gi-Oh! And an extra pack on top. And they're like, "We gave you $4. What's going on?" It's just like, just drive.
The story's making me mad. We need to move on. People like you are what's wrong with Magic and collectible card games in general, and I'm very angry right now.
That's
I'm happy for your luck. Congratulations on your amazing luck.
That's absolutely true. But one of the benefits of what we're talking about tonight is it doesn't matter what cards you pull. Why is that? Because we're back on Cube.
Where every card is good because you put it together yourself.
You built it yourself out of your own stuff. So
buying singles and not playing the crazy game of cracking the pack and getting the chase card 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
All right.
I will have to say, don't do that if you can.
Don't do that.
You will most of the time lose. That is
a God. That story just grinds my gears.
That was a wild day. But okay, so Adam, we have talked about building a cube. We have talked about playing in a cube environment. We've talked about a bunch of stuff. We have done all of the work. We've built our cube. We have everything set up. How do I get people to come over and play?
Weep and beg deeply and assure them that you won't just wreck their faces. That's the joking part. But in general, it's a board game night. Actually, it sounds really complex, and you would expect that like anybody who owns a cube. We've made jokes about how like if you own a cube and then you just like spend all your time trying to get people to play it, and then they decide they want to play their own decks, and then you just like smile and you put it away and you say that's okay next time. But like this is the assumption that you've finally convinced everyone to come over and play your cube. And so we're going to just give you a bit of a rundown on how to go about doing that. It sounds like it should be simple, but building and owning a cube, you're going to find that you want to play it and you're really anxious to do so. And it's a couple of like, not do's and don'ts necessarily, but just, I guess, anecdotes from my experience having built and played a cube with my friends and taken it places, and just how I've managed to enjoy it more by tempering my own expectations and helping other people enjoy it in a way that isn't just you telling them and berating them like play this and do this and this is how you're supposed to do this. Because I will tell you right now, the best things I've seen come out of my cube have been the stuff that I did not see coming at all. We've talked about how our friend Scruff now has a pauper deck based off of a deck that he put together out of my cube, and it is way out of left field. Have you ever heard of Is It Aristocrats, Matt?
Right? Not before I saw that deck, for sure.
For sure. And I never saw it putting it together. It's not a thing. It's not an archetype I had designed. I don't even think I have anything really aristocrat. I guess a little bit in Mardu, but I didn't design anything in there to be aristocrats heavy.
Mhm.
I did not think Izzet was going to be that way. I think Izzet in mine is more of like a spell slingery and actually coin flip. And here, this bright, beautiful mind pulled a bunch of stuff together out of my like ramblings and made a deck. So if you can take a look at this from a perspective of just be like having a good time with your friends and trying to put together the best time for your friends and design a good product. Well, I say product, but that's a loose statement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, product is a good idea because we'll talk about it in more detail later. But you have developed a game by building a cube. This is a new game. It is a linked product with a rule system that we all understand. But the entire development of it was you. So
Mm-hmm. And so when you have your own cube and you're going to be thinking about it from that perspective, how do I make it better? Well, what's the one thing you can do to try and get anything done? Practice.
yeah,
And
test
what's
it.
practicing? Yeah, you test it. That's practicing. Game development comes from playtesting, and this is basically just routine playtesting of your new game. So I guess we'll just jump right into it here because I can't seem to find a segue into hosting a cube night. Uh, Again, it's just simple do's and don'ts isn't really even the thing I want to use, but we're gonna go with it for now. So the first thing you're gonna want to consider is the amount of time this is going to take. Uh, it's really on par with a whole actual board game night or D&D night or something like that. Like you're going to have people drafting, and those who have drafted before, whether on arena or in person, know that like just the simple act of passing packs around is going to take up a bunch of time, and then building the decks, never mind running through and playing. And it's still like mine is a commander deck, a commander cube rather, but your cube might be uh like a 60 card or 40 card format cube. But any of this stuff, however you're going to design the gameplay, that's still going to occupy time too. So just know that this is like when I say hosting a cube night, I kind of mean night. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, even if it's in the afternoon, like you're still looking at like 3 4
hmm
hours. Like
at
we've
least.
played my cube on even using things like Mox Field to do the deck building and like a draft simulator to do the drafting, and that still took time. And we didn't have to make packs. We didn't have to, pull out the basic lands. Everything was done for us. We didn't have to set up a table to
Mhm.
put our decks on. Like, well, I guess we did because we used Tabletop Simulator,
Yeah, but
which
we
has
did.
its own.
But yeah, still a.
How much time did we shave off? And it still takes us 3 hours to burn through.
mhm. Yeah, this is huge because I think when my buddy was running the Modern Masters and the Conspiracy Cube days, like he would have me come over to help him start getting ready at like 11 o'clock. The crew would show up at 1. We'd eat lunch and then start playing around 2. We didn't usually leave until it was dark, and this was in the
Mhm.
summer, so like we'd be there till 8 9 o'clock sometimes, just hanging out, eating, playing, doing whatever. So
Yeah.
like definitely like it's a party. So like let your
Yeah.
friends know that they're gonna be there for a while.
And like we don't mean that in a negative way. It's not
Yeah.
like it's going to drag on, but
Yeah.
like just like any other board game night, you settle in for a board game night. You don't like well, unless you're playing Monopoly, but never in my house. But you don't settle in and say, "Okay, so we're going to play like one giant board game for like an hour and a half and then everybody's on their way." No, you got together. You're going to chat, you're going to talk over the game. You're going to, regale each other with tales. We're all also grown-ups, and therefore it's probably hasn't been, you know, weeks or months since we've all sat down together while everybody's raising kids and doing jobs and going on trips and stuff. So just know that you're gonna settle in for an evening of fun with your friends, because it seems like it would be simple. Like you usually would settle in for a board game and then crack open the box, especially if it's one you're all familiar with, and just like get into it. But it's a little bit more with a cube. First off, if this is the first time you've ever played your cube, or if there are new people playing your cube with you, you've likely set up your own set of sub rules. As we've discussed, I have rules about the two color, the partners with cards that came in Battle Bond and Ikoria. Those are in my cube, and when you draft one, you automatically get the other. Well, that's a special rule that I made for my cube to help it function better. There's also things like the starter pack in my cube. So these are all out of the usual scope of the Magic rules. So you need to be able to communicate these to everybody, make sure everybody's on the same page before you start. A lot like opening a board game and reading out the instruction manual.
Mhm.
You are the instruction manual though, and that's why it's on here and it has to be clear. You can't just assume everybody's going to know about the silly things that you've changed to make yours work that way. So you need to be able to be clear about that.
On the idea of this being a board game night, I mean, we talked a little bit about it before, but I've never done like a regular board game night, like where you're playing like a literal board game. But I do know from my friends who do it where it's like the beginning of the night is making sure everybody is fairly familiar enough with the rules. Like you don't want to just get like halfway into the game and then them have a bunch of questions on what the turn order is or whatever, or things like that. It is not a learn as you go type process. So the first hour or whatever that they spend actually playing the game, they'll devote to reading the rules of a very complicated board game. So like it's important to be able to really be clear on where those are coming from.
It's true. And a lot like while you're reading the rules and stuff like that, the other part is usually like setting up all the pieces in the board and stuff, which still actually kind of exists with a cube, because if you're going to be drafting it, you're going to have to get all your packs together. That can be a little bit of a thing, but it doesn't have to be. I actually end up starting out so well. Like a lot of times when you sit down to a board game night and you're starting the conversation openings that you have with your friends as you're sitting down. So how have you been? Go good. Yeah, I went to so and so. I start everybody shuffling up the entire cube. It's a great time for it because it's a mindless activity, right? You know, when you're like sitting down, even at a regular commander night, and you're just like everybody shuffling up. Oh, what are you playing? Blah blah blah. Cool. Yeah. So I went to the bookstore the other day, and so as you're like shuffling your decks, you're having these conversations. Same deal, but you're going to have to make all these packs. This is going to be a whole process, right? Unlike when you sit down to a regular draft, you just have your 3 packs in front of you and you crack each one because they were pre-made by wizards. You're making your own. So you're going to know how that kind of should go for your own cube as you've either play tested it before, or if it's your first sit down, you've at least like seen how cubes work. So this is going to be a good time for that. And you're going to want to make sure that you have all of the things available. What kind of things would you require? I wrote down here tokens and dice. Just a good thing to have around. If you have people that normally play Commander or other board games and card games or D&D, they might have some of this stuff kicking around anyway. Infinite tokens are all over the place now. They have those right there. They have done a fabulous job of marketing themselves to the Commander crowd, and now they exist pretty much everywhere. Actually, now it's funny you say that because I can just reach over and do the same thing.
Hey.
Like, these are everywhere now. Some people might take the extra step of customizing which tokens they have. Like if they know that certain tokens get created in their cube, they might set them aside and have them on hand. I didn't do that with like my Commander cube, but I do have a second what would I even call it? Memorial cube? Sort of. I lost a friend about a year and a half ago, and I took all of his decks and put them into kind of like a never changing eternal thing where it's just 6 of his decks, and I went through that and I found every token that it can create, and I put those in there along with a collection of his dice that also stay in the box. And so stuff like that.
Sort of like the game night collection then, except with this person's decks. That's really cool. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice way to, this is a sidebar, but it's a really nice way to like be able to remember how he used to play, because he was a ridiculous deck builder. I really enjoyed it. I actually played one of his decks on one of the earliest Praetors for Charity events. I got wrecked because he designed his to be more casual, but Phyrexians, the Praetors for Change, they tend to build some pretty sweaty stuff on purpose. It's part of the gimmick. I knew what I was getting into, that I was going to get like beat on for it, but anyway, having that stuff kicking around, probably not a terrible idea. If you know that these people don't play Magic regularly, bring some playmats too, just to give them the full experience. I mean, some of us have, I don't know, 18 playmats up on my shelf right now, right?
Yeah.
I
could go grab the Naruto playmats if I had to from the Naruto trading card game. Whatever you need to do.
Do not. Yeah, whatever you gotta do. Basically, though, the long and short of this, though, is that you're going to want to make it a nice, comfortable, welcoming evening for your friends in the same way that you would normally do a board game night anyway, or D&D night or whatever have you. You already kind of know how this works. We're just giving you like things to check off as you're thinking, I'm going to do a cube night. How is it different from a board game night? Only slightly. Only slightly.
I think the extension of what you want to think about this, if we're equating it to like a board game night, part of the fun of a board game night is that only one person tends to bring like something in terms of the game involved. One person will bring the game with them, or the person who's running the game night will already have the game in tow. And that takes a lot of the baggage off of the people who you have invited to come in and to your space and be a part of things. So the more that you can lower that hurdle for them, the more likely it is to for them to just say, "Yeah, I'll come over on Saturday and play your cube," because they don't have to bring anything. They don't have to bring their decks. They don't have to bring their dice or their tokens, their playmat. All they have to do is bring themselves. And depending on whether or not you're the kind of people who do it, maybe bring a dish, like some food.
I do love a good potluck.
Me too. Every time. Which I think is the next bit that we have kind of written down here, which is like be welcoming into making the environment welcoming for the people that you're bringing over. This is a party. Like, I know that we're talking about it like it's like, oh, there's going to be a draft, but this is a party. This is a social event for you and your friends to do the things that you love to do. Adam, what do you love to do when you're playing Magic?
Oh, here we go. Drink beer and eat tapas.
That's right. And
I love it.
So food is a huge portion of that. So finding some kind of food that you're cool with having either in between games or during a game, like snacks that can be done while people are playing with your sleeve cards, or some kind of meal that you can do before and after or after your draft is super key. For the ones that I used to go to, my buddy would like make ribs. We would each bring a dish. Someone would bring, and we had a lot of college people. So some people would bring like chips and dip and things like that, which are all good things that you need to have at a party anyway. But everybody would bring something, and then the first thing we would all do is just sit and eat lunch and talk and go through things, catch up on, like you said, the weeks that it's been since the last time that we all hung out. And then we get into the games. And then anytime you wanted to, if you were done with your games and not in the way of anything, you could go grab another plate, go chill, eat some more food, and get going. There was always plenty of food left over. People were allowed to bring their dishes back home if they wanted to bring the dish home, or if they wanted to split it up with people. We would, at the end of the night, just start like setting up plastic bags full of the random stuff that we were eating that night and take it all home. It's a party. Treat it like a party. Make sure that people are totally comfortable. Light music, always good. Even if some people, like a lot of people, when they draft, they feel like they need a heavy amount of concentration. Trust me, light music is better than no music. Always, always, always.
I would say too that like a lot of people are reading the cards in a cube anyway. A lot of people like reading the cards, but if you have assembled a group of people, you're likely already comfortable with those people, and like the concentration is very light by comparison to say like a sweaty draft event. And I actually did write those words down. Think regular board game night, not sweaty draft event. And in my experience anyway, it ends up being a lot more like table talk of like, oh my God, this is in here. Or, like, oh man, when I play this, I'm going to wreck your face so hard. Like there's a lot more of that because you already broke down the barrier of friendship. And so like you get to have a little bit more fun, and the light music does help create that atmosphere. And in general, I, as somebody with like a great deal of ADHD, find music helps a lot of just like having a noise in the background to like keep me from paying attention to when the pin drops on the other side of the room. Because
every once in a while we'd put up maybe like the Magic Championship that was going on at the time. That was always fun too. Like
I can see that, yeah.
Something in the background so that if you just got dunked in your game, it'd be like, all right, man, you want to go see how, Finkel's doing,
Yeah.
So yeah, anything like that to make the environment more chill, more comfortable. It's gonna increase your fun. I promise.
So you've welcomed everybody. You've eaten a bunch of food, gotten everything going, and now you're drafting. There's one particular thing that I have had to struggle with while hosting my own cube night, and it is be patient. I struggle with patience in general. I'm an impatient individual as like by nature. But one thing that I have found is that like you're very excited about all this. I will, at least I get excited about it. Everybody's got my stuff in their hands. They're looking at like my brainchild. Everybody's like reading these cards and deciding what to do with the things I've handed them. I am excited. And it is a lot of effort to just like cool my jets and sit there and do my own draft. You're going to want to like help people out. You're going to want to tell them what you thought about cards as you were putting them in. You're going to want to like get in there and like really proclaim how much you enjoy this. You need to chill a little. I'm not saying this to be rude to anybody. I am saying this as somebody who has had to tell myself, you need to cool your jets. There's a lot of excitement going around in your brain, and you're getting a lot of that dopamine. And what you got to do is just like let others experience everything and let them show you what they can do with the things that you have found. As we have said with Scruff's deck, if I had said a word to Scruff about how to draft this thing, would we have gotten that deck?
No, no way, no way. And
Not
that's a huge thing. The draft experience is something that can be very personal to someone. Like for me, I've mentioned this before, but when I did the Modern Masters Cube, I love Murderous Redcap. I think Murderous Redcap is one of the most fun cards that they ever made. I really like Lorwyn Block. It ended up in Modern Masters, so I played it. You know, I would play Red Black Goblins all the time. And one of the things that you'd always hear someone in the group say would be like, "So Matt, did you get lucky enough? Are there two Murderous Redcaps going around the table? Are you going to get do the thing?" It's like, did you get this other Black Goblin, anti-Mog or something like that? I'm just like, why don't you mind your business and you'll see how many goblins I'm playing when I play my goblins. How about that for a fun time?
Yeah. And like, so that kind of rides the line because I like it and I see where you're coming from on this specific point at the same time. Like, if that was the organizer and they had like, and it's slightly different, I think, also because you're talking about like a set cube. Mm-hmm. And it's a little less curated, but at the same token, like they did put it together. They know how many Murderous Redcaps they sleeved up and threw in that thing. But at the same token, that really shows that like that table talk and like friendly jabbing you're going to get that I personally think is one of the best parts.
Oh, absolutely. And it's for the fun of it. You laugh and you move on, right? But you don't want to press that kind of stuff. You don't want to be in everybody else's draft. Like it's like, oh, like we do table talk, especially during the draft. So you'll hear somebody go, it's like, pretty sure Will just drafted 3 grape shots, just letting everybody, keep that in mind. There's gonna be a storm deck hanging out around here.
Yeah.
There's the difference between that though, and then it's like, okay, I know that you're passing into this, you should just start cutting this person hard on red, or whatever. Like, don't teach people, like, give them the information they need to draft. Do not tell them what to draft.
Yep. But also be open to like, especially if you're the one who put all these together, you probably gave some thought to how these cards might interact, or you've looked up specific rules on a card to make sure that's going to do what you want in your cube. So also be available to answer questions. Like this is a play test of an unreleased product in ways, as we said. Mm-hmm. And so if you're the only one who knows these rules, you're going to be the one they're going to turn to say, hey, like I've got this card here and I'm not sure exactly what it does. Can you either take a look at it? Don't tell anyone else what it is. Yeah. Or like, do you know how this ruling is? Maybe they don't tell you. Be open to answering these questions in a way that doesn't give away this information to the rest of the table. And also, you already know all the cards that are in the cube and what potentially might come up anyway. So it shouldn't be too terribly difficult, at least I find in my experience. But there's a term that I've heard before, especially when we're talking about either reading fiction or getting involved in role play, and it's called suspending disbelief. Like, you know that this person now has this card. Maybe they drafted it, or maybe it went into the pack and they passed it, and now somebody else is going to grab it. You know this card is out there. Don't use that information to try and further your own game plan. Pretend like you never had it before. And if you've done any of these aforementioned things, it shouldn't be too terribly difficult, because all you're going to do is just suspend my disbelief that this card has been picked, and you let it pass, and you just, by the time you get to your own deck build, you work on forgetting that you ever saw that. And that never comes up in how you build your decks, how you do the rest of your draft, because you're going to end up coming into this a whole lot as you draft your own cube, especially as you start tweaking your own cube. You know it's in the pile of cards. You put the pile of cards together. So just use what you know about that and about being patient, and then answering the questions. Put all those together, and then like move away from it. It never happened. Have your own fun draft experience out of what you have put together.
Before we move forward, though, why don't we take a palate cleanser, do our randomizer for the day?
Hey, that's an excellent idea. Yeah, it worked out really good. We have Archdemon. There's no D on the end of that. Archdemon of Unks. Just 5 black for a 6/6 creature demon. Has flying and trample. And at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a non-zombie creature. Then put a 2/2 black zombie creature token into play. I was most certainly not playing during Shards block, let alone to play any sort of limited. I don't know anything about this card.
Shards block is a very interesting block. Shards, for people who've never played it, Shards of Alara is one of the most popular blocks for the 3 color groupings of cards. If you look at the back of a card here, anytime you see 3 grouped together on a side, that would be a shard. A wedge is anything that it makes a triangle with across from it. So looking at this particular card, white, black, green is a wedge. White, green, red is a shard. It always means 3 color when you're saying shard or wedge.
I guess on that same note too, if it was something that is, God, the stuff falling off my desk today. If you weren't playing during that time and things like the word Jund doesn't make any sense to you, what we're referring to is in story. The plane of Alara was broken up into 5 individual sections, and each one was assigned a name, and each one was tuned to a particular color of mana, and then the 2 friendly ones, as Matt just explained, were the secondary colors in that shard of Alara. And so when we just picked them all up as colloquialisms to apply when we're talking about a deck that, for example, is white, red, green. We call it Naya because the shard of Naya on Alara was attuned to the mana colors of white, red, and green. So that's why we call it that.
So for black, the shards that we would be in would be Grixis, which is black, blue, red. And then Jund, which is black, red, green. And then the other way would be black, blue, white. Esper? Yeah, Esper. The set was built in such a way to try to cater to these kinds of decks. Talking about Archdemon of Unks in particular. 7 mana for sealed is fine. 7 mana for 6/6 flying trample, very solid card. It has its beginning of the upkeep, sacrifice a non-zombie, then create a 2/2 black zombie. Means that if you have no other non-zombies other than Archdemon of Unks on the upkeep, you have to get rid of Unks to create a zombie. So that forced push into a 2/2 kind of sucks. But if you build your deck low enough to the ground that you're going to get at least 1 swing in with this Archdemon, it's okay. Shards of Alara has a decent amount of removal, but it's not like super removal heavy. So it should be okay for you to use. I would definitely use this in a sealed deck as long as I hit 17-ish creatures, 16, 17-ish creatures. And if I were playing in draft, I don't know whether or not this would hit my cut on things because it is a good heavy swinger, but I'd just be worried about putting myself into a situation where I couldn't cast it.
So like I gotta wonder if like the sheer number of creatures, that non-zombie clause is actually really aggressive.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the distribution of zombies was, but I know that like zombies had a big play in the Jund and
Mm-hmm.
in the Grixis sub themes, right? Like Unearth and oops, dropped my other pencil. Having a bad day for pencils today. Uh where did I go with this here? Because I just a quick gander here at this. I wasn't playing, but I'm somewhat familiar. But Devour, that's the other one. Sorry, so Devour
Yeah.
was one of them, and Unearth was the other one. That was Jund and Grixis, respectively.
Yeah.
And Esper was Artifacts, which this doesn't play into at all. I don't know which shard they're like putting this Archfiend on, Archdemon.
Crumbling Necropolis being the Grixis, it probably is supposed to fall into Grixis. There are 10 zombies total in Shards of Alara. And one of
Okay.
which, though, is being like Fleshbag Marauder, which makes people sack creatures. You know, you're dealing with a lot of zombies that either can unearth or things like that so that you can bring them back so that they can be sacked again. So the zombies themselves all sort of have some sort of sack outlet on them anyway. So you're probably not wanting to play this demon in a full zombie deck anyway. You're wanting to use it as a heavy hitter later on, and you're hoping to have a lot of non-zombies out at that point. So hopefully you're in Jund. But all in all, I'd say I'd play it in sealed. I'd be a lot more hesitant in draft. That's playing back when I was.
Yeah, see, and I didn't play the set. Like I actually came back shortly after draft. Like my return to Magic was in like the Zendikar.
Yeah.
So which was just shortly after Shards, right? Like Shards was known and still hot, but I was in like the Zendikar and into Scars block. So everybody talked about this, but I wasn't paying any attention to it because it existed before I was playing.
Exactly.
And so I didn't get to play, but like just as like I guess if I'm thinking in like modern design, and the more we talk about it, the more I kind of pay attention. I would probably be more hesitant in sealed unless I got like the all-star pool, and then would be more inclined. And then at least in sealed, because it's just black, then you know you have the access to play it in something. If you were to go like a weird other 3 colors, why you would go with like a wedge in a shard set, I don't know, but let's just say. But like in a draft, at least you can control. Okay, so I pop this like pack one, pick one for some stupid reason. You pack one, pick one this, and then don't draft any zombies if you can help it.
Yeah, exactly. If you get this P1 pack one, pick one, just force your way away from zombies. Like
yeah,
if you absolutely can. Yeah. That being said, what do you think about this one for Cube?
Like it's not bad. I will say, like, I maybe like, I don't know that I would run it in a constructed deck, but I could be persuaded to slotting it into a cube. I think that it straddles a couple different things. Again, like Aristocrats in a cube is a little bit tougher just because it does require a lot of real estate, as we've discussed about how a cube balance, like an archetype requires a lot of space or a small amount of space in your cube to be supported properly. And I found that Aristocrats, I do have some Aristocrats in mind, but like you got to really stretch for it and like do well with it. I could see this one doing okay in a cube that you did have a good amount of Aristocrats in, just because you're going to want the sack outlet once a turn. You're going to probably have benefits to having creatures die. Maybe you want that 2/2 so that you can also sacrifice that. That said, and in a similar way to how sealed and to a lesser extent draft, you're going to be like creatures are going to be at a premium. I could see that being the case in a cube, that like you want the creatures you have to stick, and the fewer, like unless you also went heavily into like tokens and you have a lot of token generation in your cube to provide non-zombie creatures to this thing and not use up all of your actual card creatures. that's going to be a big deal. And why I would have probably personally avoided this in like an actual limited at the time anyway, because I don't think I would have it in me to build around it in a real sealed pool or draft pool.
Mm-hmm.
So putting it into a cube would be, I could be persuaded if other people were to be like, I think this would do really good in your cube specifically after they played it. But even then I would probably pass it in my own cube.
I get that. As far as Commander goes, this card in particular hits like a very sweet spot for me when it comes to the way that I want to build Commander decks versus the way I build Commander decks. Because it's right there on the line of maybe making it over either side of that. Because on the one hand, this is exactly the kind of thing I want to be doing in Commander. Like we had talked a little bit off screen about I love the new braids. I find the new braids to be really fun, really engaging, something to do that isn't just your normal edict everything all the time kind of thing. And if there were more effects like that one, I could see myself running this in that deck to help force edict when I need to and gain enough value from having a 6/6 with 7 trample. It's not a great card. It costs 17 cents. That probably gives you a hint of how well used it is within any format.
Mm-hmm.
But it's right there on the edge of what I want to be playing. Like I wish I could play this more often. But the reason why I say it's right there in the middle is because then when I go to actually examine and build a braids deck for whatever, I know that I can't make it too weak because people will see braids and immediately go, I don't like that. I don't like what I think you're going to do. So I'm going to stop you at any point that you can. And generally, the token generators in mono black are zombies. So you're not going to be able to use your tokens to get this out of the way. Maybe if you get lucky, get an Ophiomancer on the board to make snakes. But chances are you're not going to be able to use tokens for this, so you would have to have a lot of creatures, and that's a downer for it, you know. Like if you get rid of even if you had to get rid of zombies, but they were zombies that were non-token,
like
zombies,
non-token zombies. Yeah, I could see
and
that.
make a zombie token, I could do more with this card in Commander than I can with it currently. As it is right now, maybe make a Jund Commander and try to have fun with it.
I do have like one thing that I think it could fit into pretty hilariously, and it's as a budget option in a what do you call them things? Shadowborn Apostle deck.
Yeah.
I could see it being I keep dropping my friggin' pencils. At a Shadowborn Apostles deck where you sacrifice X number, I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. I'll put it on the screen. But if you go to sacrifice X number of Shadowborn Apostles to go and tutor out a demon, and this was the demon you got, then you have 2 mana 1/1s that would happily sacrifice themselves to this to then generate a 2/2 zombie. And you would be routinely pumping out a bunch of these 2 mana 1/1s. And I could see it doing well in there. Now, I say budget because Shadowborn Apostle decks usually pack themselves with like 6 or 7 or 8 of like the most ridiculous, oppressive, and expensive demons that Magic has to offer. But if you were looking for a budget option, if you were trying to do that, as it stands, Shadowborn Apostles are each $4 a piece, and the only way to do it is to buy 25 of them or something like that.
So yeah, they range anywhere. The cheapest ones, weirdly, are $1.18 in American, so that would be about $4 ish, almost Canadian.
Not quite that bad, but it's close enough.
And upwards of $668.99 if you're looking at the secret lair drops. But you're talking about a solid $40 or more into Shadowborn Apostles alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to get a 17-cent demon that helps get the job done, it's not bad. It's not the worst thing you could do.
Yep. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try and figure out like how many other decks can we shoehorn this into, but I think that that's just one option. If you've got one of these
Mhm.
in your pile and you've also just so happened to coincidentally have 20 Shadowborn Apostles,
Yeah.
this might be something for you to look at.
Maybe you were playing your original Shadowborn Apostles deck and your friends told you to take out all the good stuff because
Yeah,
you're
it's
an ass.
time to tune it down,
Tune it
bud.
down a little bit. This is not
Yeah.
a bad tune down.
It's not a bad tune down, and it still does the trick, and it still fits in the theme. That's I think that's what triggered it to me. So,
Yep.
so on the topic of it, so we're going to wrap up randomizer, and we're also going to talk about wrapping up your cube night. See, look, I finally get
Excellent.
a segue I can hang my hat on today. Jeez.
Excellent. So, how do we wrap up a cube night?
Well, you get mad at all your friends, you put all your stuff back in a terrible way. Hopefully, you leave one of your cards there, and then you leave mad. Or alternatively, you do it the smart way that's going to help you make a better game night going forward, and you start asking your friends how it went. This is a playtest for an unreleased product that you are currently designing. And the only way to know how it went is to analyze how it went. So you're going to ask your friends what they thought about it. They're mostly going to tell you it was a good time because they're your friends, but they will still have some criticisms. I found, as an example, that after the first time I had some of our friends playing it, I asked, what could I do better? And I actually just found the sticky note that I had written it down on, and I'm not even telling a joke. It's right here.
Okay.
And the first thing that I got told was, I think you could have more 3-color support. That is a very good criticism because these people sat down, they went through all of my cards, and they built decks out of them. And they found that whilst there was a little bit of 3-color support in one of my earlier iterations, that they could not fully build a 3-color deck, and they felt shoehorned into a 2-color deck. And that was really eye-opening. And actually, after that, I did, in fact, add in like a couple hundred cards. I took it from a 6-player to an 8-player at that point, but that's what I basically did was I just stuck to 3-color stuff. I increased the ability or the mana fixing in some of the non-basic lands. I basically only added in actual cards that were 3-color. I increased the number of commanders that were in 3-color. I increased some of the spells that were in 3-color. That's where I ended up with the full slate of the charms out of New Capenna. So stuff like that to really bump it up. And I have heard no complaints about the support since I did that. And I wouldn't have had a single inkling on that that's the way I should take it until I sat down with friends and I asked for their feedback, and this is what they gave me.
Mm-hmm. I think another telling of how listening does something was you were telling me that after we had talked about your cube on the podcast, and I had mentioned that you were running one of the Crystal Veil or whatever, the tap land, the tap land that you can choose what colors it taps for.
From like Double Masters too. Yeah, it was like the Crystal Caverns or whatever, Cryptic Caves.
Yeah, something
that
like
stupid land that came in, and I was like, well, that's for draft environments. Let's jam it in there.
Yeah. And but like I had talked about like, oh, that was a thought, that was a good way to make sure that people had the fixing that they needed. And you realized after we had talked that you didn't put Command Tower in that little
it was
fix package.
It wasn't that bad. It was Path of Ancestry. Path
of Ancestry. That's what it was. Yeah, Path of Ancestry, which is just better. It's better 3-color support. It comes out tapped as well, but then at least when you cast your commander, you get to scry one. So like, it's just going to be better all around. And you were just like, I can't believe that I thought of that after you said whatever.
So. And this isn't even news, right? Like I've had this cube for like years, and I was like trying to reformat the starter packs, and like this was during the sleeve debacle of 2022, and I was like, oh, and it was just shortly after. Double Masters 2 came out, 2022 or whatever you call it. And I saw this thing. I was like, okay, well, I could use this. I also, because I opened a box of stuff, I ended up with like 36 or whatever number, 24 of these stupid things.
Yeah, that helps.
And like, otherwise, they're there to back a proxy I printed otherwise, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're useless. And on top of that, the thing, and here's the other stupid thing. And this also came from listening to people and why they didn't use the thing is that if you recall, that was the one where you like circled a couple colors on the card itself. I will post it so we can read the ridiculous thing I did.
Yeah.
And people didn't use it because they didn't want to have to remember, because you didn't want to like write on this thing or on the sleeve. They didn't want to remember what 2 colors they chose for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so hearing that it wasn't getting used for that reason, and hearing you say like, yeah, I cut it. I'm never going to use this thing anyway.
Yeah.
And so you can find these ways to tune it, whether it be that or I don't even. Oh, there was a card that I just misread, and I had it. I don't remember what it is now, but I do know that there was this one, a card I had misread, and somebody says, "Why is this in here?" And I says, "Well, because blah blah blah." And they went, "That's not what it does." And I read the card again, and I was like, "You are correct. That is not what it does." And so if I was just like, "Don't tell me what's in my cube. I put it together. You're stupid. And you're all stupid." If I wasn't paying attention to the feedback I was getting from the people who were actually putting in the effort and time to play this with me, I wouldn't have known how to improve it, because as we've said in previous episodes, this cube is like a living, changing thing, and you're going to constantly be working on it. And either you're going to sit there in a vacuum trying to like theory craft your way through hundreds of cards on your own, or you're going to take the advice from the people that actually played it and put the thought into building a deck out of this, and then gave you some feedback. One other one that you put down, and I actually quite like it, and I'm wondering if I'm going to ask you directly, because
Sure.
I don't know if there's actually one that you had from my cube personally, because we didn't talk about it, but you made this point. As you had mentioned that like there could be cards that upset either the balance of the cube or the mood of the cube. And I'm wondering, have you found any of that in my cube? And if not, do you have like an example of a cube you played where that was the case?
So I don't think I found one in your cube, but I think I was worried about one in your cube. So in your cube, you had Rune, I think is the name of him. The
Rune of the Hidden Realm.
Yeah, Rune of the Hidden Realm. And Rune of the Hidden Realm, if the right support is in a cube form, can be very stifling for the group. And I know that when we were talking about it during the thing, someone had said, "Oh yeah."
I'm for those who are only on like Spotify listening to us, you're going into a lot of detail, and so I'm going to give them some context. Rune of the Hidden Realm is 2 green, white, blue for a 4/4 legendary creature Rhino Soldier with vigilance and trample. And the scary part is it says pay 2 and tap Rune. Exile another target creature, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. And it is a known combo piece and a scary commander in general. And Matt, why were you scared?
Well, and that's exactly it. It is a scary commander in general, because with the right support, there are some ways that you can create infinite locks with this. You can do just too many enter the battlefield effects that create way too much value for the person involved. Anybody who's played up against this or a Brago deck in Commander will know that there's a blue-white card that just when it enters the battlefield, it detains all the other players. So if that managed to sneak its way in and the person who drafted Rune drafted it, they can literally just keep blinking this creature and detain the entire table until they win. The players can't attack, block, or do anything until...
What's his name? One of the Lavinias, was it?
Maybe. It's definitely one of the Azorius guild.
Because Detain was specifically in Return to Ravnica blocks, so right. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to look it up because now I'm curious, and after we've spent this much time talking, it will be on screen. I will figure out which one it was.
Yeah, but like having the ability to like chain enter the battlefield's abilities is really, really powerful. It's usually held for really powerful commander. And actually, it was funny because after we talked about it in our group, after we were done playing that day, someone said that they felt like they couldn't have built Rune because they didn't feel like they saw enough ETBs to take advantage of. But for me, that was the thing that I thought made Rune fair, because we did see some stuff. You have Mole Drifter in there, and that was a big deal. And there were some other things that kind of played, but it wasn't super blink heavy because you didn't think of it being like blink is my blue-white thing, right? And so it turned out I had nothing to worry about. And since then, I believe that the thing's changed and has more blink effects in it and more things that could work along with Rune. But Rune is one of those cards that I know that when I lose to Rune, I didn't have a good time during that game, usually. So that would be something I'd be worried about.
And you are correct. Actually, it's funny because I did listen to that criticism, and you're right. After that, I did go in and put things like momentary blink, ghostly flicker, stuff I hadn't thought to put in before, to make sure that like a build like Rune had a shot. But I made sure to avoid stuff that made you worry, because, and I did look it up, and I'm just going to tell you again, it will have been on the screen already. But you were thinking about Lavinia of the 10th, which detains everything.
Yeah.
I think Lavinia Azorius Renegade's in there, but that's like a wildly different card. I can't remember. They'll both be on screen. But like, so the stuff that, you know, you worried about, I listened to you to make sure that I didn't have that be a point of imbalance in the cube, while also listening to, I think it was Scruff that said it, while also listening to Scruff and adding stuff in to make a blink strategy actually feasible. And I like blink in general anyway. And like, you're right. I didn't think, oh my God, I can't wait for somebody to lock us out with Rune. I was thinking, you know what? I want to see if somebody can use all these things to build a little bit of a value engine with the blink. And also, blink cards are really good anyway, because in any color that they apply to, whether it be momentary blink in white or ghostly flicker in blue, or that other one that's like blue in the flashback cost and white in the, anyway.
Yeah.
So like anything that they can fit into, you're going to have a critter that you're going to want to bounce. Somebody's going to go to like targeted removal and you save it. Somebody's going to, you know, you had that Muldrifter out already. You already got the 2 cards and you're like, huzzah. So like they're really good cube cards anyway. And I wouldn't have had either of those things to consider if I didn't have the two of you giving me feedback after playing. After, by the way, I did think about, and here's an interesting point, is after playing the stupid thing, I listened to my own feedback, because in order to make room for stuff like those blink cards we were talking about, I found cards that upset the balance and mood of the cube in the archetypes cycle. I had 4 of the 5 in there thinking, and the 5th one was stupid. Like the green one gives everything hexproof on your side and nothing else can have hexproof. And that is wildly imbalancing, I thought. And I says, but the other ones that give trample but take away trample, the ones that give first strike but take away first strike, those should be fine. Wrong. Way wrong. I play tested it. I found that it was that way, and I gave myself feedback. So like, that's where you're going to find this out. And it leads me to like this kind of like this last point here, where it's like, don't take the criticisms personally. You're learning to design a game while you're doing this. You're going to sit down. You're going to put all the effort into having everybody come over. You're going to put all the effort into making it a welcoming and open environment. You're going to teach everybody how to play your game. You're going to go through all the effort of playing it. And then you're going to ask them for feedback. And at that point, you should probably accept it willingly and openly with an open mind, rather than just shoving it back in their face after putting 4 hours of time and effort in. Be open-minded, because you're trying to learn how to make this better. And you're trying to... Good.
I was just going to say, on that note, just know that as it is hard not to get defensive about something that you make, right? Like clearly it's something that you put a lot of time and effort and focus into, and you might feel like anybody telling you differently is like just crapping all over that work.
Oh.
But that is not the case. Like,
if you want to experience what that feels like and know exactly what I'm talking about, hand your deck to somebody and ask them to find you 1 cut.
I've had to do this for Adam. It's not fun. I'll be honest. Like, I love being able to help, but like, we will run into times where it's like, well, you know, like my first thought is I'm looking at this card and it's whatever, and it's like, oh well, you know, that card, it does, you know, it's this and this. I'm like, I get that, but like, how often do you really get a chance to do that? And it's like, yeah, but when it does happen, I want to do, you know, all this. We all do it. We all do it.
I'm not that bewildered on my cards. Most of the times you go to do one that I have in there for flavor.
Yeah.
And I am a flavor builder before I'm a you know what I mean?
Sure.
I either build like a Rube Goldberg or I build for flavor. And everything after that just kind of comes. So like you often pick out like your first inclination is one of my flavor cards, which I understand.
Usually it is. Yeah.
But like, and I mean, it's just like hand your deck to somebody, and I experience this frequently because you're right. I hand you my decks, and I'm like, find me a cut, and I just wait for you to find the one card I already knew. I actually started giving you the cards not to look at.
Yeah,
being like, don't look at this, or this. They're in there for like personal reasons. I recognize that they're not the best. Yeah. Find me something else. But if you want to experience what it feels like to like finish up a cube night, and you want to prepare yourself for that feeling, give your deck to somebody, have them find one cut. They're going to find the card that you put in there on purpose for a reason. And they're going to be like, this sucks, take it out. And you're like,
yeah,
that hurt.
Yeah. But remember to keep that for you, for personal, because they weren't doing it to hurt you. They were doing it to help you. And like, you can defend your position to them, but all you've done is say, thanks for the feedback. I'm not going to listen to you. And you can still choose to do that. Just don't say it to their faces because they're trying to help you.
You jerk. You found the one card. But one thing you can't get out of this process that we've just spent a good time laughing about. I didn't think it would be that funny, but it turns out it was great. One thing that you're not going to get necessarily out of handing your deck to somebody, and you're only going to get in doing something like this. And this isn't necessarily just cube related. If you're designing any game, any sort of like multiple person experience, whatever it be, you're designing an escape room, you're designing your living room theater setup. Like if you are taking criticisms for people, keep in mind that they're not trying to offend you. They're trying to cultivate their own fun experiences. Mm-hmm. You've invited them to partake in something that you proclaim to be fun. And then they're going to tell you how it can be more fun because they want to come back and experience it. If you don't take these things with a smiling face and an open mind, they're going to see that, they're going to feel it. And then they're going to realize you're not going to take their advice. And then they're not going to come back another time. Mm-hmm. And again, as a cube owner and wanting to play it all the time, one of the hardest things to do is find a bunch of people who are willing to play your thing instead of their own decks, or your board game instead of the board game they really like, or watch a movie that they prefer over the movie you prefer, right? Like it's always a give and take, and you're asking them to spend time with you and you're inviting them into your space. So keep in mind that you need to make your space fun for them as much as you need to make it for you.
I spent a long few years, like 3 or 4 years, doing freelance playtesting of people's various games. Because, after you play card games for a long time, it's not weird for people to want to make a card game of their own. Everybody, a lot of people got their own idea for a card game.
Ascension, Epic, the card drafting game, Rogue Book on all sorts of video game platforms. All of these people were either made by people who were good at Magic or were made by the guy who made Magic. And I have just found 3 without looking at my board game
Inscription,
shelf.
Artifact, Keyforge.
Keyforge.
Yeah. Was that new one? Even something like Battle Spirit Saga, which is done by Bandai, was made on the idea that it's like, Magic is blowing up. We can do this. We can do the same thing that these things do. And so I spent a while like being paid to test card games. And one of the things that I always tell people when they are building a game is if you have a system where you're segmenting things like Magic does with color, don't make drawing cards a thing within a color. One of the things that Magic has been trying to make up for in the last 10 years-ish is that they made blue the draw a card color, and it has made it so that blue is insanely powerful even when it's weak, because just being able to draw cards is such a huge advantage over the other colors not being able to draw cards.
Actually, the best example I can think of that exact thing is take a look, especially since we're talking about cubes today. Take a look at like a vintage cube, a very well curated vintage cube list. Either one that like they play on MTGO. You see a lot of them on there that pop up. Those are designed by like either pro players or very well renowned players. Cube Cobra has endless numbers of. That's where I keep my cube, and I deliberately don't look because all I'll see is a bunch of blue heavy cubes. We mentioned in an earlier episode about how when you're building your cube, color support matters more than color balance, and that is never more true than in a vintage cube. A 5-color game should be, roughly speaking, 20% one color, and I'm pretty sure it's at like 40% for most vintage cubes, only in blue, because blue is so powerful and so well, like so highly prioritized in a draft that people have just started jamming it full of blue, and to hell with the other colors.
Yep. But when you're working in that professional playtesting environment, people, like, you'll tell people, it's like, don't make draw somebody's thing. Like, don't do it. You'll regret it. Trust me. And they'll, their defense will be something like Magic. They'll be like, well, Magic does it. And it's like, well, Magic's been trying to correct it for the last decade. Like, and Magic got lucky that it didn't shut itself out by being in that way. Like, when they first built Magic, they didn't realize Time Walk was going to be a problem. One in a blue, take an extra turn. They thought, this is going to be fine. It's going to be okay. No one's going to own this card, and even if they do own this card, they're not really going to be able to capitalize on it. They weren't thinking of the fact that, especially at the time where there wasn't a 4-copy per deck rule, they weren't thinking about people who would literally just spend hundreds of dollars making sure that they had 20 Time Walks. So...
Well, like, and there's that, but on top of that, like, they weren't thinking that like drawing one card or taking one extra turn was that. And at the time, they're right, right? Like, if we're thinking back to when this was designed back in like the alpha beta days, everything was so much less of like an explored space, and everything else was nowhere as near as powerful. Like, nowadays, an extra turn in Commander might as well like win again. 2 turns. If you take 2 turns in Commander, I typically scoop to you.
Yeah.
Right. And but at the time, they had no idea. And like you said, now they've spent literally decades trying to correct all these things. So, and it's a matter of like, do you want to be them or do you want to beat them?
Exactly. So just remember, anytime somebody with that cultivating their own fun, especially if you hired someone like me to check your game, to pay to check your game, listen to the feedback, because the feedback is being given to you with the idea that you want your game to last longer than a year, or whatever. And that's the same thing with your cube. If you want people coming back to play your cube next summer, after this summer, and they've come in and played your cube, you want them to come back and play your cube again next summer and the summer after that. You've got to be willing to listen to some of the things that they tell you. Sometimes people are salty. There's nothing you can do about that, but be wise enough to pay attention to what people are telling you.
And just keep in mind, you asked them to tell you. So listen to what they have to say. But anyway, gang, you've listened to us quite a bit talk about all this stuff. You've asked us for our advice. We gave it to you. And you can get more advice just like this on the next episode of Unlimited Commander. Have yourself a great night.
Bye.
If you liked what we had to say, consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support goes directly to growing and improving the show.
You can also like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Make sure to comment or leave a review. The cast can also be found on Twitter at Unlimited Commander.
You can find Matt's Twitch, Twitter, and other YouTube projects at knowledgepoolmtg.com.
And Adam can be found on Twitch and Twitter at Adamus_Prime86.
Our theme song is Polaroid by Harris Heller, licensed by Creative Commons.